Let's get some more analysis so we can speak to Anna Borshchevskaya, who is a senior fellow and a Russia expert at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Thank you very much indeed for joining us once again here on France 24. First of all, can I just ask you for your thoughts on Zelensky suddenly cancelling that appearance via video link to senators? Why do you think he's done that?
I also don't quite know what to make of that. It is worrisome because Zelensky's speech would have come at a critical time, as your previous correspondent described, at a time when the future of military aid to Ukraine is at stake. So I'm also having a hard time understanding what happened.
Yeah, I mean, without this aid from Congress, this next tranche of military support, I mean, can Ukraine really continue the war against Russia?
All right. Well, that is the question to ask, and I don't think Ukraine can. What Ukrainians have been impressing upon the West for months is that without this critical military assistance, they will not be able to continue fighting, as the war is about to reach its 2-year anniversary. And with the West now having to focus its attention not only to Ukraine, but also to Gaza, as well as the United States turning to a presidential election in the next year, there's so many other priorities now that Ukrainians are rightly worried that the longer the war goes on, the more they're being put at a disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean, that was what Putin banked on in the first place, wasn't it? There would eventually be fatigue. It looks like he's got that calculation right. And he must be watching these developments with a sense of absolute delight.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. His strategy appears to have been from the very beginning, and he did have a strategy, and that was to wait the West out. If enough time passes, then Western resolve will weaken, the ability for the West to hold together will weaken, and in the meantime, he was able to continue to throw resources and people at the war, because again, from his perspective, he doesn't care how many people he sacrifices if he's willing to wait.
Can Europe step up to the plate a bit more and plug the gap, or is that simply unrealistic?
At this stage, that appears unrealistic. It's really the United States, and that's why American military aid is so critical right now in helping Ukraine. Zelensky's message, of course, earlier was always that if Putin is not stopped in Ukraine, this will not end in Ukraine, that he will keep going further. That's why this war was never been simply about Ukraine. It was about something much bigger.
Yeah, I mean, we've got an election coming up in the US. Obviously, you're about to go into an election year over there. And I'm just wondering what the US public makes of all of this, and whether there are any polls that indicate that perhaps it wouldn't be in a candidate's interest to suggest carrying on supporting Ukraine. Are there any polls out there that give you a sense of what US public opinion is like at this stage?
Most recent polls show a decline in support for Ukraine, for continuing to fund the war in Ukraine, as compared to previous polls. The polling was always, the majority was always supportive of Ukraine, but it appears to have reached about approximately a 50-50 level. President Biden's approval ratings as well appear to have gone down based on most recent polls. So this raises a lot of worrisome questions about the future because, of course, Donald Trump indicated that if he wins, he is not going to show Ukraine the same level of support that the Biden administration has.
And I mean, do you think the level of support for Ukraine from both the US public and in the corridors of power is correlated to the apparent, let's say, lack of breakthrough with regards to Ukraine's counteroffensive? I mean, is that what you think has driven this?
I think that is an important component of that, absolutely. Unfortunately, there's been a misunderstanding of how the Ukrainian counteroffensive had gone. The fact of the matter is, the Ukrainians, with what the Ukrainians had to work with, they had done very well. They had to fight a very difficult battle without air cover. Frankly, our modern Western military would never engage in a battle like this. In other words, we asked the Ukrainians to do what we ourselves right now in our modern times would not do. In these circumstances, they've done well. So there's been a misunderstanding that the Ukrainian counteroffensive failed and the expectations were unrealistically high.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. That's all we have time for. Anna Borshchevskaya, Senior Fellow and Russia Expert at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Thank you again.